Hello to everyone. This is Impact 2022, our continuing conversation where we talk about just different topics, everything from social injustice, where we talk about race, where we talk about religion, where we talk about current events, day to day topics, everything. This is our continuing conversation. And for those of you who have been here before, you know that this is a conversation. So, what we value is your opinions and your questions. So, please type those into the comment section. If you have anything to say, just go ahead and type it in. We will address it immediately and right then and there. And so this is our continuing conversation. As always, we hop right into the conversation. For those of you who've been here before, you know that we usually have guests and we have topics that we go through and we discuss. However, we're going to do something just a little bit different today. Still, I want your comments and your questions. We won't have a guest, but we will discuss a topic and a little less traditional topic than what we usually talk about. What we're going to talk about is something that's fresh and brand new. But recently, today, 28 civil rights organizations and 28 groups, organizations that comprise of civil rights and healthcare organizations went and wrote a letter. And this letter was sent to the Equity Commission of the United States Department of Agriculture, or known to most of us as the USDA. And in this letter, what they were describing was a situation of where they called it dietary racism, based on the fact that the school lunches provide a dairy milk product. And to explain that even further, there is a program that many of us are familiar with, which is the National School Lunch Program. It's been in existence for over 70 years. I think it may be like 75, 76, something like that. But it's been around for a long time, for most of our entire lives. And in this program, what it's set up and it's designed to do is to help little children have a balanced meal during lunch or other, even breakfast and other times during the course of the school year, and even other organizations outside of schools. And right now, this program covers, let's say, over 30 million children, and it crosses over 100,000 different schools. And the purpose of this program, again, is to provide these meals. One integral part of the program, though, is that you get a reimbursement for the meals that you provide, and you have to provide dairy-based milk. And so in this letter that was coming from these organizations, they were saying that it was dietary racism because many of the children who participate in this program, and they say that they're overrepresented, are African American, Native American, Asian American, basically those of different minority groups. And in those groups, there's a high level of lactose intolerance. And so you can sit back and you can imagine, well, you're getting fed breakfast and lunch during the course of the school day, yet you may be lactose intolerant. And now you've drunk this milk because it's supposed to be a nutritious drink for you. And now the rest of the day, your stomach may be agitated, if not worse. And so what was sent in the letter is basically an explanation that is saying there has to be some other options and some other substitutes that should be allowed. To go further, it's not just that they require milk, they require dairy milk. So there's no substitution for that dairy milk. So you can't use soy milk or almond milk. Now that's more expensive. Lactose-free milk, what I drink, that's also more expensive. Even other organic forms of milk, none of those can be provided. It must be dairy milk. And so that is problematic for those who have lactose intolerance. If you don't understand what lactose intolerance is, just a quick breakdown. Lactose intolerance means that your body cannot break down the simple sugars that are produced in the milk. And so when you ingest milk, it's usually not going to be fatal or anything such as that, but it will give you severe upset stomach, diarrhea, other situations like that, bloating, gas throughout the day until that milk is processed through your body. Again, the simple sugars are never really broken down and processed fully, and you don't get the full nutritional value that someone who is not lactose intolerant would get. I can speak to it myself. I'm not fully lactose intolerant. There's a little bit of lactose intolerance there, but if I drink just regular milk, there's a great possibility for the majority of the day I'm going to have an upset stomach. I'm going to have a little bit more gas going on. So you don't want to be in the room with me. But for a lot of other people, it's much, much worse. In my household, we only have lactose free milk. And so back to what we have. National School Lunch Program. Now I'm going to give you some facts here about how bad it is, because you may think initially what I thought, which is, man, here goes another group just whining again, or here goes a topic that's really not that important. We should put our energies and our concentration towards something else. But according to health organizations, 80% of Black and Latino people are lactose intolerant. At least 90% of Asian and people of Asian descent are lactose intolerant. And 80% of indigenous Americans, that would be who we historically would call Native Americans, or the older term of Indians, or anybody who is indigenous, 80% are lactose intolerant. And when you look at the population of people who are considered, or are not considered in those groups, so you look at white people, only 15% are lactose intolerant. And so again, according to the civil rights organizations in the National School Lunch Program, minority groups, African Americans, are overrepresented in this program. And so what their assertion was that there need to be some other options. Now, to be fully truthful on this, there are options. But what the child would have to do is get a written request from their parent that they would have to bring to the school, that the school would then have to submit in order to provide a substitute for the milk. And then they can still qualify for their reimbursement. And so basically you have all of these students, because most of them don't have the ability to go home and or even understand that the milk is causing them problems, and would have to go home and get a letter. So that's not really practical in the sense for 30 million kids. For the 30 million kids, the percentage of them who are lactose intolerant to all go get letters and provide that. When the majority of them, according to this, of color, will be lactose intolerant. Why is this important? Well, important for two reasons. First reason is because one of the people who are leading this is Al Sharpton, the much aligned Al Sharpton, where people criticize a lot of things he did in the past, criticize how he carries himself. Again, that's probably more aligned to the past, when he used to walk around in jumpsuits and things like that, if you know of him. But it's important that I bring up the fact that he and his group, the National Action Network, along with other groups that I don't want to leave to the side, the Maryland Democrats, NAACP, different chapters and organizations. But I want to bring him up because we continuously hear from people, and I say it often myself, is that we really don't have that Black leadership. And at some point, I think we have to acknowledge that we actually do. But it may not be the leader that you want, but it's the leader that we have. And it may not be the leader that you think is going to get a bunch of things done, but it's a leader that we need. And I think at some point we have to stop looking for leadership and see that we have some leaders here. Flawed, maybe, but they're leaders. And we need to get behind some of the causes that they have. And then I think that's really important. Really, really important. And so kudos to Al Sharpton, kudos to all of those who are working on this particular initiative. And just as a reminder, as we keep saying, we don't have any Black leaders. We really do. We really do. Again, it may not be the one that you want, but it's the one that we got. It may not be the one that you think is going to get it done, but it is the one that we need. And so he's out here doing the work. And so let's give him credit and let's give him support. Just as people in general. That's to everybody, across racial lines, across political lines, whatever. This person's working to get things done. And so off on that tangent. Back to the second part. One of the things that was important, and why this is important, is because a person said, how do you expect a child who qualifies for the program? So already there may be some challenges there. So then focus in on working and getting their education while their stomach is bothering them all through the day. While they are worrying about how poorly they feel, they're supposed to be able to do math and, arithmetic, algebra, geometry, whatever level that they're at. They're supposed to be able to read and write. They're supposed to be able to be able to retain information about social studies or civics or whatever classes that they may have to participate in, all while their stomach is battling them because it can't digest those simple sugars. And so as the person puts it out there, then it becomes important to you or becomes more relevant. And where I was just like, oh man, this is just another little topic that they're talking about. And then you realize, no, this is a major deal when you have over 30 million kids across 100,000 schools across the United States who may have to deal with milk, dairy milk, and no substitute. We'll make them drink water. Well, that's not one. If it was water, that was what we wanted them to drink, then that would have been a part of the reimbursement. But they wanted a nutritious milk, the vitamins and the calcium, the vitamin D, the calcium that comes in milk to be provided into these kids. And so what this is just purely an example of what I'm going to say and what I believe is unintentional racism. And then not in a bad way, not calling anybody any bad names. But unfortunately, sometimes in society, what happens is we don't think about others because we don't know to think about others. From time to time, we all know of situations where people can sometimes not think about those who have disabilities. And so they call it ableist when we don't think about those who have disabilities and we don't think about those who are fully functioning able in that way. And so we don't have problems with that. Well, we unintentionally put in steps and we just didn't think about anybody ever having to use a ramp, or our doorways weren't wide enough because we unintentionally didn't think about anybody who might have to use it in that manner, because we just weren't looking. That's a blind spot that we didn't see, and we're okay with saying that, and we're even okay with the ableist label. But when we talk racism, sometimes people get all bent up and out of shape. This is important to realize that I think this is an unintentional consequence of just not really focusing on or not really even knowing about the bodies of those of color. And you sit back and you say, well, the majority of kids in the program are white. So the majority of kids in the program, if you put the 15% ratios, you start throwing some math, the majority of the kids in the program can deal with lactose. So you're not even sitting back and really, if you're sitting there doing all the numbers and saying, well, the majority of kids are going to get their vitamins and the things that they need, and milk is good for them, then you'll go with the majority. You don't even realize or think about that there's a whole nother group. And when they say overrepresented, Black people are 30, depending on where you're looking and what time you're looking, 30% of the population, people of color. We add all of them up, we're almost 40% of the population total. You're talking about a large group that you're not really thinking about just because we're not thinking about it. So it's unintentional racism. Unintentionally, it was a racist policy put into place unintentionally because it said basically we're providing dairy and you have to go out of your way to get something different. And now we all know that there's a bunch of different options when it comes to milk. Some of them are expensive. What I drink at the house, lactose-free milk, costs a little bit more. Not a lot, but just a little bit more. But soy milk actually costs a little bit less depending on where you get it. And so to put in an option such as that, even just an option would be great. You may think again, why this little rant? This is not really an important issue, but it is an important issue. And it is one of the examples that we bring up of a system that's been put in place that may unintentionally be racist. The school lunch program, which is meant to help people of all races, all colors, unintentionally, my belief, is punishing people of color for historically being lactose intolerant. Remember the numbers: 80%, 90%, 80% of these minority populations are lactose intolerant. And so all of those children either are going to have to skip the milk option, are going to have to go to their parents to get a written letter, or, which most kids are going to do, be uncomfortable and not even know that it's because of the milk and be uncomfortable all day. When we talk about things such as CRT, critical race theory, which is the much aligned critical race theory that people complain about all the time, saying it's divisive, saying saying that white people are bad and black people are not bad and victims, which that's not the genesis of what it's saying at all. But when we talk about things like a CRT, which is an examination of how racist policies have creeped into our system, or are a part of our system, or help build the system, and how much of that is still in the system and still influences the system. And when people say that's not a necessary or relevant conversation to have, you look at this. You look at the National School Lunch Program that was built I believe, not as a racist program, but yet is, as what's said, dietary racist, inherently racist, because there was a blind spot when looking at the physical attributes of those people of color. And so why do we need to check and do these mental hurdles and look back and say, well, what's going on with, why do we need to look at our justice system and see what parts are inherently racist? It's because things like this happen. I don't know anyone who is of decent mind who's going to sit back and say, well, we should go ahead and just give them milk just because that's what we've always done, and even if it's hurting them, it's fine. No. I don't know anybody who's going to intentionally do that, unless again they're racist. But if something is racist because of the system, that's not an indictment on any one person. That's not saying that somebody is mean or somebody is terrible. And it's definitely not saying that the people who are administrating the program are somehow mean or racist or terrible. But the system is, and the system is broken. And it's a fix that needs to happen. I never even knew, had a blind eye to it. But that's why these exercises are important. That is why our systems need to be examined by those who are, hip to the game, those who are wise enough to be able to see and look at our different systems and look at our different policies and see, well, where is there some holes in this that are persecuting a group of people, intentionally or unintentionally. And again, in this case, I believe it was totally unintentional. I don't, we thought for the longest time that milk was so healthy. And then we've had reports in the last couple of years that milk isn't good. And then you have all these people who are now vegan who don't even want to drink cow's milk because it comes from an animal. So there's so many different changes and things that we thought over the years that no way you could have anticipated from the past. But what it does mean now is that the system is, we can acknowledge it is racist, I believe unintentionally, because it affects those of color disproportionately. 80%, 90% versus 15%. And even though the majority of people in the school lunch program are white, let's be clear, majority of the people in the school lunch program are white when you look at the numbers, which means there's not a large population. It's not the majority of people who are going to be lactose intolerant. However, if the majority of the people who are the people of color are lactose intolerant, you have to change the system. And so kudos to everyone who, the 28 organizations, healthcare organizations, and civil rights organizations who were a part of this, who wrote the letter to the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. I would hope that you swiftly change the policy so that the redemptions in the school lunch program can be for something. Don't get rid of milk if you don't want to, but also have a milk substitute, soy milk, lactose-free milk if you want to spend that big money, or some other type of nutritious drink. And that's the way that they basically categorize it, that it needs to be a nutritious drink, and they chose milk as it. And so again, to everyone who thinks that these exercises of CRT, these exercises of looking at our past or looking at our current situation, looking at our past and how we establish things and looking at our current rules, is an exercise in futility. It's not. These are real world consequences and these are real world things. And as much as you may say, well, kids have been drinking this for decades, because again, this program has been around for over 70 years. This still doesn't make it right to continue on today in the same manner. So, as I said so many times. So, let's continue to look at the policies and the rules and look at our personal lives and see what blind spots do we have. How are we unintentionally making it tough on people to survive, making it tough on people to thrive, making it more difficult for individuals? Because at the end of the day, we all know it is difficult to stay focused when your stomach is doing cartwheels. And so, again, we have the leaders. Number one is we have the leaders. And we keep looking for this leader and looking for that leader. We have leaders right in front of us. May not be perfect, but they're right here. And number two, let's continue to be vigilant and look at the laws and the policies that are here and how they are affecting different people. CRT, critical race theory, again, which people hate, which, you know, my current governor here in Virginia hates. These are academic exercises. These are exercises where you have to take an honest look at what is going on. I don't know if these people have mirrors in their houses that hate CRT, but they clearly don't want to take a look at themselves and see whether or not things are going right. And that's all of us. This is not certain groups of people. You got to look at yourself. We're all looking at ourselves, because just like there's a policy that is hurting people of color in the lunch program, there could be policies that hurt other groups. And we know that there's plenty of policies that are out here that hurt women specifically, and that we need to take a look at those. So we all have something to look at. We all need to be looking at ourselves and taking our time to make sure that our policies, our rules, our procedures, whether it be from a government standpoint or any kind of organization, are not out to hurt. And so that is it for today. A little bit different. I understand and I acknowledge that. But we'll be right back at it next week with a guest and with our ongoing conversation. And we want to continue to highlight events such as today, such as the letter, and such as the National School Lunch Program. I thank you for joining. Please, again, come back next week as we're here every Tuesday at 8 o'clock to continue our conversation. Have a good one, and thank you again.